My husband and I walked into a luxury condo owned by a Dutch expatriate. Arnold believed I couldn't understand a word of Dutch. Then I heard him say something so cruel, so calculated, that my entire world shifted beneath my feet. Welcome to Formidable Revenge Channel. Before we begin, click the subscribe button, like, and tell me in the comments where you are watching so I can send you a hug. Your support helps us bring more mind-blowing stories, and trust me, you wouldn't want to miss them. Now let's begin. I closed the bedroom door and pulled a worn Dutch textbook from my hiding spot beneath a stack of bed linens. The pages were dog-eared and covered in my neat handwriting, with sticky notes protruding from various sections. I turned on the desk lamp, adjusting it to its dimmest setting so light wouldn't seep from under the door, and opened my exercise notebook. In the living room, the television droned on. Arnold was reviewing financial reports, occasionally clicking through investment forums on his laptop. I knew he wouldn't disturb me for at least the next 2 hours. This has been going on for 9 months now. Every evening when my husband worked late or became absorbed in his own activities, I sat down with my textbooks. At first, it was just curiosity. An advertisement for free online Dutch courses had appeared on my screen one evening. Then it pulled me in. I liked discovering something new, feeling my brain activate, sensing how words formed into sentences, gradually beginning to understand a foreign tongue. It was like solving an intricate puzzle, only far more thrilling. But I told Arnold nothing, and had no intention of changing that. 2 years ago, when I mentioned wanting to take art classes at the community center, he had laughed so dismissively that my enthusiasm evaporated on the spot. "Marjorie, you realize that's not a serious pursuit, right?" he had said, not even glancing up from his tablet. "You'll waste money, go for a month, and quit like you always do." I haven't quit anything like I always do. I had tried to object. I just want to try something new. New? He had chuckled, the sound condescending. "You have a new interest every few months. First it was yoga, then that book club, then some other nonsense. You'd be better off managing the house properly." Back then, I had remained silent, but the resentment settled deep inside like sediment. And when 6 months later I decided to actually sign up for those yoga classes, he didn't even let me finish the sentence. He interrupted immediately. "We don't have money for frivolous expenses. Do you even know how much our mortgage costs these days?" Since then, I stopped sharing my desires with him. Why bother if he wouldn't take them seriously anyway? It was as if I had become invisible in my own home. Arnold decided where they vacationed, what furniture to purchase, when to have dinner parties. I cooked, cleaned, agreed, and occasionally tried to object, but he would wave me off with the same tired phrases. "I know better. You don't understand these things. Let me handle it." And I retreated, time after time, until I grew accustomed to being a shadow in my own life. I poured myself tea from a thermos I specifically kept in the bedroom so I wouldn't have to venture to the kitchen and attract attention. I settled into the reading chair beside the window and immersed myself in the exercises. I pronounced words in a whisper, checking my pronunciation through an app on my phone with headphones on. I cherished the feeling that I had a secret, something of my own that Arnold didn't know about and couldn't control. It was my small sanctuary of freedom in a world where everything else had long ceased to belong to me. About an hour later, Arnold's voice drifted in from the living room. He was on the phone, discussing market trends with a colleague. His voice carried that animated tone, confident, engaged, almost jovial. I raised my head and listened. He sounded so alive, so present in that conversation. He hadn't spoken to me with that kind of energy in so long. I sighed quietly and returned to my textbook. trying not to dwell on how profoundly our life together had changed. When we married 14 years ago, everything was completely different. Arnold had been attentive, genuinely interested in my thoughts and opinions. Together, we dreamed about their future, took long evening walks hand in hand, made plans, and laughed at the smallest things. He called me his brilliant girl and told me I was the best thing that had ever happened to him. I, Marjorie, believed every word. I had been happy simply being near him, listening to his ambitions about building a career, owning a beautiful home, and the children we would have someday. But over the years, something shifted. Arnold became more rigid, more self-assured. He started earning substantial money as a financial consultant and seemed to decide that he now had the right to unilaterally govern their life. I worked as an accountant at a small firm. My salary was modest, barely covering groceries and my personal expenses. Arnold never missed an opportunity to remind me that he was the primary breadwinner, that he paid the mortgage, the car payments, and funded our vacations. "If not for me, where would you be?" he would say during arguments. "Probably in a cramped apartment with roommates, that's where." I stayed silent because deep down I feared he might be right. That without him, I really couldn't manage. That I was too weak, too indecisive, too ordinary. We didn't have children. At first, they postponed it for their careers, the mortgage and renovations. Then, it simply didn't happen. Doctors shrugged our shoulders. Everything appeared fine with both of us, yet pregnancy never occurred. Tests, examinations, procedures. It all lasted more than a year and ended in nothing. Over time, this topic became too painful, and we stopped discussing it altogether. Secretly, I still dreamed of a child, imagining tucking a baby into bed, reading fairy tales, teaching first steps. But I was afraid to voice it aloud, terrified Arnold would say something cutting, that it was my fault, that I couldn't even accomplish this one fundamental thing. In recent months, a wall has grown between us. He stayed late at work more frequently, arriving home exhausted and irritable. At dinner, he responded in monosyllables, buried in his phone. I tried to initiate conversation, asking about his day, sharing something about work, attempting humor. He would nod without truly listening, and 5 minutes later, retreat to his laptop. And so, night after night, I escaped into my Dutch lessons, conjugating verbs, memorizing vocabulary, mastering pronunciation. Each small victory was mine alone. I didn't know then that this secret language would become more than just an escape. It would become her liberation. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. 3 days after my latest Dutch lesson, Arnold announced over breakfast that we were viewing a luxury condo that afternoon. "It's an investment opportunity," he said, not looking up from his phone. "The seller is Dutch, some expat named Charles Bacon. Prime location, good rental potential." My heart skipped. Dutch. The word hung in the air like a test I hadn't studied for. Except I had. For 9 months I'd been preparing for exactly this, though I hadn't known it. I kept my face neutral, took a sip of coffee. "Sounds interesting." "We'll leave it too," Arnold said, already moving on to his emails. But I wasn't moving on. My mind raced with possibilities. Should I tell him I could understand Dutch? The thought came and went in an instant. No. Something stopped me. A curiosity I couldn't name. How would Arnold behave if he thought I couldn't understand? What would he say when he believed I was safely in the dark? It wasn't a test I'd planned. But now that the opportunity presented itself, I couldn't resist. When 2 o'clock approached, I came downstairs in a simple blouse and slacks. Arnold looked up from his laptop and frowned. Wear something nicer. We need to look successful. I swallowed the familiar sting and went back upstairs without a word. Changed into a dress he'd bought me last year, one I'd never particularly liked, but he'd insisted suited me. Applied makeup in silence, watching my reflection transform into the version of myself he preferred. In the car, Arnold talked nonstop about investment strategies, rental income potential, property appreciation. His words washed over me while I stared out the window, my stomach tight with anticipation. "I'll handle the negotiations," he said as we approached downtown. "You just observe." I nodded, keeping my expression mild. "I'll observe more than you know," I thought. The building was impressive, all glass and steel, with a lobby that gleamed like new money. In the elevator, Arnold straightened his tie, checking his reflection in the polished doors. He looked confident, commanding. I stood beside him, hands folded, heart pounding, not about the condo itself, but about what I might discover. Charles Bacon answered the door with a warm smile. He was distinguished, maybe mid-60s, with silver hair and kind eyes. When he spoke, his English was impeccable, colored by a Dutch accent that made my pulse quicken. "Welcome, welcome, please come in." The condo was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows flooded the space with light. The kitchen was modern, sleek. 2 spacious bedrooms, hardwood floors, a view that stretched across the city. I found myself genuinely impressed, imagining what it would be like to live here, to cook in that kitchen, read by that window. Then the shift happened. As Charles showed us the master bedroom, he and Arnold began mixing Dutch phrases into their conversation. Just small things at first, a word here, a comment there. Charles glanced at me. "Does your wife speak Dutch?" "No, not a word," Arnold said smoothly in English. Then he smiled. "She's not really the language type." Not the language type. The phrase landed like a slap, but I kept my face pleasant, even curious, as if I hadn't understood the question or his answer. My hands trembled slightly. I clasped them together. Arnold grew more comfortable after that. He slipped into Dutch more frequently, discussing property values and rental markets with Charles. I wandered to the window, appearing disinterested, just the dutiful wife, along for the ride. But I was listening, to every single word. Charles seemed slightly uncomfortable, glancing at me occasionally as if uncertain about speaking around me. But Arnold showed no such hesitation. Finally, Arnold suggested they discuss details in the study. "Marjorie, why don't you look around? We'll be there for a few minutes." I nodded, relieved to have space to breathe, to process what I was hearing. As they disappeared into the study, I wandered through the condo again, running my fingers along the kitchen counter. Everything here was what I'd want. Light, space, freedom. Could this be ours? I wondered. Could this be mine? Then I heard Arnold's voice from the study, speaking rapid Dutch, his tone shifting to something I didn't recognize. And I moved closer to the door. I stood in the hallway outside the study, pretending to admire a piece of abstract art on the wall. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. The moment I'd know who my husband really was. Their voices carried through the partially open door, speaking Dutch. Charles's voice was hesitant. "So you'd like the property titled to both you and your wife?" I held my breath. "Actually, no," Arnold said in Dutch. "Just my name. It's pointless to involve her in these matters." My breath caught in my throat. "Are you sure?" Charles sounded uncertain. "In case something happens." "Charles, let me be frank." Arnold's Dutch was smooth, confident. My wife is simple-minded when it comes to finances. She gets emotional, asks too many questions. It's better if I have full control. The hallway tilted. My vision blurred at the edges. But surely she'd want to understand. Charles tried. She doesn't need to understand. Arnold's laugh was casual, dismissive. She's not smart enough for property matters. Trust me, this is easier for everyone. She's clueless about these things anyway. I gripped the wall. My knees went weak. Nausea rose in my throat. Simple-minded. Not smart enough. Clueless. Then came the killing blow. Besides, Arnold continued, his voice dropping conspiratorially, if things don't work out between us, I want to make sure everything stays mine. You understand? Protecting assets. I'm not comfortable with this approach. Charles said, you're getting your price. What does it matter? 14 years. 14 years of marriage shattering like glass in my ears. Every dismissal, every I know better, every patronizing pat on the head, it all crystallized into this single, devastating truth. It wasn't just control. It was contempt. The man I married either never existed or had died so long ago I couldn't remember when. I wiped my eyes quickly, forced my face into something resembling neutral. I couldn't fall apart here. Not yet. I walked to the bathroom, locked the door, and stared at my reflection. Red eyes, pale face, a woman I barely recognized. I understood everything, I whispered to my reflection. Every single word. I splashed cold water on my face, reapplied makeup with shaking hands, made a decision. I wouldn't confront him here. I'd wait. I'd plan. When I emerged, Arnold and Charles were exiting the study. Arnold looked pleased with himself. Ready to go, honey. We'll think about it and get back to you. Actually, Arnold? I paused, letting him wait. Could I ask Mr. Bacon something? Of course, Charles said, slightly relieved to escape Arnold's presence. Do you have information about the building amenities? Certainly. Let me show you. As we walked toward the kitchen, Arnold's phone rang. He stepped away, already absorbed in his call. I looked at Charles and said quietly, in perfect Dutch, I understood everything you both said. His face was drained of color. Shock, then deep embarrassment flooded his features. Mrs. Travis, he stammered in Dutch. I apologize. I should never have. It's not your fault, I said, still in Dutch, but I think we won't be buying this condo. I'm truly sorry. If there's anything I can do. Actually, I met his eyes. There might be, but not today. Arnold returned, pocketing his phone. What were you two chatting about? Charles recovered smoothly. Just building rules. Nothing important. I smiled. Nothing important at all. As we left, my hand on the doorknob was steady. Steadier than it had been in years. The ride home would be silent. But the silence was different now. It was mine. Arnold drove with the energy of someone who'd just closed a great deal. That's a solid investment. Good bones, prime location. I think we should move forward. We, I said quietly. Yes, we. Why? I decided to test him, to see exactly how far he'd go. So, it would be in both our names? Of course, he said without hesitation. That's how marriage works, honey. Liar. Complete liar. The words screamed in my head, but I kept my face calm. I pushed further. Did Mr. Bacon seem trustworthy to you? Absolutely. Very professional. Why? Just wondering what you two discussed in the study. Boring details. Numbers. Closing dates. He waved his hand dismissively. Nothing you'd be interested in. Nothing you'd be interested in. The phrase hung between us like poison gas, and suddenly I remembered every single time he'd said that. When he refinanced our mortgage without telling me, when he moved our savings to different accounts. His decision alone. When he bought a new car and surprised me with it, never asking what I might want. I'd called it romantic, thoughtful. He was taking care of everything. Now I saw it clearly. He'd been erasing me from my own life, one decision at a time. At a red light, I studied his profile. Still handsome, still confident, completely oblivious to the fact that his wife understood Dutch. He was so certain I was clueless that he didn't even bother covering his tracks well. The betrayal was casual, effortless, which somehow made it worse. I noticed his hand on the steering wheel. I used to love his hands. The way he tapped along to the radio used to be charming. His cologne. I'd bought it for his birthday last year. Everything familiar had become alien. "You're quiet," he said. "Everything okay?" "Just thinking. About Dutch." He laughed. "Dutch? Why Dutch?" "It's an interesting language." "Not really. Very harsh sounding. Lucky you don't have to learn it." "Lucky me," I echoed. I almost told him everything right there. My hand even reached for the door handle, an insane impulse to open it while moving, to escape. But no, I wasn't ready. I needed a plan. We pulled into our driveway, our house. I'd chosen the paint color, after Arnold approved it. The garden I tended. Arnold said it looked nice enough. The mailbox with both our names, soon to be separate. Everything looked the same, but felt utterly different. Inside, Arnold went straight to his laptop. "I'm going to run some numbers on the condo." "Arnold, can we talk? Can it wait?" He was already typing. "I really need to calculate the ROI." I should have insisted, but old habits die hard. "Sure, it can wait." I walked to the bedroom, pulled out my Dutch textbook but didn't open it. Instead, I stared at my phone. Considered texting Charles Bacon. Considered calling Linda. Considered screaming. Then I made my decision. I would confront him tonight. No more waiting. No more being invisible. I walked to the closet and pulled down a suitcase. I placed it on the bed. Not to pack yet, just to look at it. To remember I had options. To remember I could leave. Dinner was simple. Pasta, salad, nothing special. Arnold ate while scrolling through property investment forums. I watched him, gathering every ounce of courage I possessed. Finally I said, "Arnold, we need to talk about the condo." He barely looked up. "I told you, great investment. We should make an offer." "Why did you tell Charles to put the deed only in your name?" His fork stopped midair. "What are you talking about?" "I heard you. In the study." "You must have misheard. We were discussing mortgage options." "In Dutch?" "What?" My voice was steady now, powered by months of secret strength. "You were speaking Dutch. You told Charles it was pointless to involve me, that I'm simple-minded, clueless, not smart enough for property matters." He laughed nervously. "Marjorie, you don't speak Dutch. You're confused." I switched to Dutch, my pronunciation flawless. I understood every word, Arnold, every single word. Complete silence. His face cycled through emotions: shock, disbelief, anger, calculation. You speak Dutch?" "For 9 months. Every night while you watched TV or worked. Every night you didn't notice me." He stood, defensive now. "So you were spying on me?" "I was learning a language. You were planning to steal from me." "Steal? It's a property investment. I'm managing our finances. Our finances? By excluding me completely? You're overreacting. It's practical, cleaner for tax purposes. You called me simple-minded. I was. Charles was pushing back. I had to say something. So you chose to degrade your wife? The truth slips out when it's convenient? My voice rose. Do you know how many times you've dismissed me? Made decisions without me? Treated me like a child? I make decisions because someone has to. You're too indecisive. I'm indecisive because every time I have an opinion, you override it. The words poured out like a dam breaking. The art classes he mocked. The yoga membership he called wasteful. The book club he said was pointless. The business idea he laughed at. The vacation I wanted. We went where he chose. The furniture I picked. He returned it. The friends I wanted to see. Too much trouble. I provide for you. You have a comfortable life. A comfortable cage is still a cage. This is ridiculous. You're being dramatic. And you told Charles that if things don't work out between us, you want to make sure everything stays yours. Silence. He couldn't deny it. Marjorie. It's complicated. No, it's simple. You don't respect me. Maybe you never did. He looked exhausted suddenly. You want to know the truth? Sometimes you frustrate me. You're so passive, so content with so little. I have ambitions. I need a partner who can keep up. Then came the killing blow. I settled, Marjorie. And maybe you did too. The sentence landed like a physical blow, but it also brought clarity. I hadn't been in a marriage. I'd been in an arrangement. One where I shrank and he expanded. I want a separation. He scoffed. Don't be absurd. I'm serious. I'll stay with my sister. We'll divide assets fairly. And I mean, fairly. Not your version. You can't make it without me. Watch me. I walked to the bedroom, picked up the suitcase I'd placed on the bed hours ago, and began packing. Arnold stood in the doorway. Where will you even go? Anywhere but here. I zipped the suitcase closed, walked past him, and opened the front door. The night air was cold, but it felt like freedom. Linda's apartment was small but welcoming, the complete opposite of the sterile showcase I'd shared with Arnold. She made tea while I sat on her cozy couch, still slightly in shock that I'd actually left. I always knew he was controlling, Linda said, handing me a mug. I didn't realize he was cruel. I recounted everything. The Dutch lessons, the overheard conversation, the confrontation. Linda's reaction cycled through anger, support, fierce determination. You're staying as long as you need. Forever, if you want. For the first time in years, I felt seen. Actually seen. That first night, I couldn't sleep in the unfamiliar bed. I checked my phone. 12 missed calls from Arnold. His voicemails progressed from angry to pleading to calculating. I deleted them all without listening fully. Then I turned off my phone and slept peacefully for the first time in years. The next morning, over coffee, Linda got practical. What do you need from the house? We discussed lawyers, bank accounts, separation agreements. Linda knew a good attorney, her friend Patricia Chen, who specialized in divorce. I'll call her today, Linda said. She's sharp. She'll take care of you. 3 days later, Arnold showed up at Linda's building. She buzzed him up, but only after I agreed, with Linda present as backup. He arrived with flowers, wearing his apologetic face. I was thoughtless. Let's work through this. I recognized every manipulation tactic. Minimizing. I never meant it seriously. Gaslighting. You're remembering it worse than it was. Guilt tripping. After all I've provided. promising change. I'll do better. I swear. I'd read about these tactics during my secret learning sessions, in articles I'd saved between Dutch vocabulary lists. Arnold, it's not just the condo, it's 14 years of being invisible. That's not fair. I love you. Love isn't control. Love isn't dismissal. Love isn't contempt. He had no response to that. Communicate through lawyers, that's all. We can go to counseling, he said desperately. You told a stranger I'm too stupid to own property. What would a counselor say to that? He left, finally defeated. The next week, Linda and her boyfriend accompanied me back to the house. I collected my belongings, clothes, documents, photos, my Dutch textbooks that Arnold had never noticed, jewelry my grandmother left me. In a symbolic moment that felt both painful and liberating, I left my wedding ring on the kitchen counter. Patricia Chen's office was downtown. She was sharp, compassionate, exactly what I needed. Let's review your marital assets, she said. House, savings, investments. Arnold had put most things in his name, of course. But you're entitled to half. It won't be easy, but it's possible. Then Patricia noticed my Dutch textbook in my bag. You speak Dutch? Learned secretly. It's actually how I discovered the truth. How fluent are you? Conversational, maybe intermediate. Her eyes lit up. I have a client, European logistics company looking for accounting staff with language skills. Interested? I stared at her, stunned. You're saying there's a job? I'm saying there's an opportunity, if you're brave enough. I smiled for the first time in days. I just left my husband after 14 years. I think I'm brave enough. That night at Linda's, I updated my resume, listed Dutch Intermediate under languages, practiced interview answers in Dutch, my voice growing stronger with each response. I opened my textbook, but this time it felt different. Not escape, but advancement. I wasn't just running from something. I was running toward something. The Vandermeer Logistics office was all glass and modern design. I sat in the waiting area, nervous in my best professional attire, clutching my updated resume. Peter Jansen greeted me with a warm handshake. Dutch expat, maybe 50, with kind eyes and a shrewd expression. We started with standard questions about my accounting experience. Then, mid-interview, he switched to Dutch. And why are you interested in international logistics? I responded in Dutch, explaining my journey, not all of it, but enough. How I'd discovered a love for languages, how I valued growth and challenge. His face lit up. Your pronunciation is excellent. Where did you learn? Online courses, dedication, and personal reasons. He understood. Somehow, he understood. He shared his own story of starting over in a new country, the courage required for reinvention. He saw something in me. Determination, resilience, a hunger to prove myself. The job is yours if you want it. 20% more than your current salary. I tried not to cry with relief. My first day felt like stepping into a different world. The Vandermeer offices were modern, diverse, energetic, so different from my small, stagnant firm. When they introduced me to the team, I used my Dutch immediately. My colleagues were impressed, welcoming. Then, in a meeting, someone asked my opinion. I gave it, and it was valued. During a video call with Dutch suppliers, I translated seamlessly. Peter pulled me aside afterward. You have a gift for languages, Marjorie. Have you considered continuing your studies? The seed was planted. Maybe I could learn more languages, expand even further. Meanwhile, Arnold's lawyer sent a separation agreement. It was insulting, offering me barely 20% of our marital assets. Patricia laughed when she saw it. He's testing you. We'll counter with actual legal fairness. The fight was beginning, but I felt ready. Linda hosted a small divorce celebration, intimate, supportive. Friends I'd drifted from during my marriage came. They admitted they'd noticed Arnold's control but stayed quiet to be polite. Now they were vocal with support. I realized I'd had a community all along. I just couldn't see it. Then came an unexpected email. Subject: an apology and a proposal. From Charles Bacon. He was deeply sorry for participating in Arnold's deception. He'd learned we were separating. The condo was still available. He'd hold it for me, reduce the price slightly, wait for my financing. Could I actually buy the condo myself? I did the math with my new salary. Tight, but possible. If I got my fair share from the divorce. I called Charles. We spoke entirely in Dutch now. A full conversation, not secret listening. You impressed me, Mrs. Travis. It takes strength to reclaim your life. Please call me Marjorie. And thank you, I'm considering it. That evening, I discussed it with Linda. Is it too soon? Too risky? You've spent 14 years playing it safe. How did that work out? She was right. Safe had meant small. Safe had meant invisible. Maybe it was time to be a little reckless. I called the bank about mortgage pre-qualification. With my new salary and projected divorce settlement, I was borderline. The officer suggested building credit for 6 months. It's not no, I told myself. It's not yet. That evening, I walked past the high-rise where the condo was. Looked up at those windows. Imagined myself there. Free, independent, thriving. I took a photo of the building and set it as my phone wallpaper. A daily reminder of where I was going. 6 months passed like a transformation. I was thriving at Vandermeer, promoted to senior accountant. The divorce proceedings dragged on. Arnold fighting everything, but I was no longer afraid. The company sent me to a Dutch language workshop for business terminology. There, I met other language learners. One of them was Thomas, a translator with kind eyes who was genuinely curious about my story. We exchanged numbers. Professional, I told myself. Patricia secured a temporary settlement. I was getting monthly support while the final division was negotiated. I opened my own bank accounts, built credit, tracked every penny, not from scarcity, but from awareness. Money I controlled. Decisions I made. Then Arnold contested the property division, claiming he deserved more. Patricia fought back with documentation. It was exhausting, frustrating. Some days I questioned if it was worth the fight. On one of those days, I visited the condo again. Charles had given me a standing invitation. I stood in the empty space, full of possibility. Still interested? He asked. More than ever. Just need to close the divorce settlement. I'll wait. This apartment. I think it was meant for you. Later that week, I ran into Arnold at a coffee shop. Awkward, tense. He looked tired, smaller somehow. You look different, he said. I am different. I miss you. You miss having someone to control. That's not fair. Isn't it? Name one thing you actually miss about me. Not what I did for you. Me. He struggled. Couldn't answer. I hope you find someone better suited to you, Arnold, and I hope you treat her better. I walked away without looking back. Days later, Patricia called. Arnold finally agreed to 50-50. He's tired of fighting. The settlement would be finalized in 2 weeks. With my share, I could afford the condo. I told everyone. Linda screamed with joy. Peter congratulated me. Charles reduced the price another 5% in celebration. I even called Thomas. He was genuinely happy for me. This calls for celebration. Dinner? I hesitated, then smiled. Yes, I'd like that. The bank approved my mortgage. Seeing my name, just mine, on the pre-approval letter made my hands shake. Marjorie Goodman Travis. I was keeping Travis for now. Might drop it later. I ran my fingers over the paper. Tangible proof of my independence. At a Dutch conversation meetup, I shared my story. An older woman said, "I learned English at 60 to escape my circumstances. You're so young. You have so much ahead." I was 40. Half my life still to live. On my terms. At Charles's lawyer's office, I signed papers. Purchase agreement. Mortgage documents, insurance. Each signature a declaration of independence. Charles shook my hand. "Congratulations, Marjorie. You earned this." I did, didn't I? I got the keys. Stood in my condo. Mine, not ours. Empty space waiting for my choices. My furniture, my colors, my life. I sat on the floor in the empty living room, looked out at the city lights, and laughed. Pure, joyful, free. 3 months later, the condo was furnished. Modest but beautiful. Entirely my taste. Blue couch. Arnold had hated blue. Bright artwork. He'd preferred neutral. Plants everywhere. He'd said they were messy. It was eclectically, perfectly mine. Linda helped me prepare for the housewarming. Small gathering. Vandermeer colleagues, language meetup friends, Patricia the lawyer. Thomas arrived with wine and flowers. We'd been on several dates now. Slow, careful, genuine. He was nothing like Arnold. He asked questions, listened, shared his own vulnerabilities. Linda raised her glass. To Marjorie, who learned Dutch and learned herself. Everyone cheered. I felt emotion rising but didn't hide it. Thank you all for seeing me, for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself. Later, I stepped onto the balcony for air. Thomas joined me in comfortable silence. "Quite a journey you've had," he said. "Still having it. Mind if I walk beside you for a while?" I smiled. "I'd like that." Charles Bacon arrived with an old Dutch cookbook. "For your new kitchen." We spoke entirely in Dutch now. It had become our language. He'd become an unlikely mentor, friend. "You know," he said, "I've sold many properties. But this was about more than real estate." Later, Peter approached me. "We're opening a division in Amsterdam. Would you consider a 6-month rotation?" Amsterdam? I've never been to Europe. Time to change that. Think about it. The world suddenly felt vast with possibility. As the party wound down, Linda hugged me. "I'm so proud of you." Thomas kissed my cheek gently. "Coffee tomorrow?" "Tomorrow," I confirmed. Finally alone, I made tea and sat on my blue couch. I opened my Dutch textbook, now supplemented with advanced materials, but didn't study. Just held it, remembering where I started. 9 months ago, hiding in a bedroom. Now, my own condo, my own life, my own future. I found myself writing a letter I'd never send. "Dear past Marjorie, you are braver than you know. The secret you're keeping isn't just a language, it's your future. Keep going. I promise you, the woman you're becoming is worth the pain of leaving behind who you were." I folded it and placed it in my textbook. The doorbell rang. Thomas stood there, smiling. Forgot my scarf. But he was smiling. Clearly an excuse. "Actually, I wanted to make sure you were okay. Big day." "Big day, good day." He hesitated. "I don't suppose you'd like company? I make excellent midnight tea." I considered, then stepped aside. Come in. We sat together, talking in a mixture of English and Dutch. Easy, comfortable, full of laughter. The city lights sparkled beyond the window. I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the naive hope of youth, but the hard-won hope of someone who'd walked through fire and come out stronger. The door to the condo stood slightly ajar. Fresh flowers on the table, Dutch textbook on the shelf, 2 cups of tea. Me, laughing at something Thomas said. The city glowed beyond the windows. I had learned a new language, but more importantly, I had learned to speak up for myself. And that made all the difference.